Hello again everyone, I hope you're having a good day. Today I'm going to be lubing a Keychron C1 as well as adding foam to the inside of the board. I'm no professional and in fact this is the first time I've ever done this, so if I mess up, well, let's hope I don't. Because I'm a newbie, I have no interest in brushing switches for 3 hours. I decided to go with a nice workaround called Ghetto Lubing. You'll see it more later, but it involves adding lube to the top of the switch instead of disassembling it. I've had the C1 for about a month now, and so far it's a great budget keyboard for what I need. I would recommend it to anyone that needs an entry-level keyboard or is trying to get into the mech scene. It's hot swappable with a wired USB-C connection and Gateron browns. The first thing I started with was removing the keycaps using the key puller that comes with the Keychron C1. This is so we can lube the switches as well as access the screws to take the board apart for the foam mod. The stabs on the Keychron C1 come pre-lubed and there are no screws underneath those except for the spacebar, so I just chose to leave them on. Now that we have the keycaps off, we can begin to remove the screws that hold the plate housing down. You need to have a smaller Phillips head as the screws are very small and in some tight spots. There are 8 screws spaced around the board, and you need all of them off or else you'll be turning your recessed keyboard into a floating one. Also, the escape key was very hard to take out, so I used a lot of different ways to kind of wedge it out, but I suggest trying to find a better way on the internet. To get the housing off after all the screws are removed, I used an old round 1 card, but any card should work. Be careful as you work it around the edges, and take care not to force it, because it's easy to break. There are small plastic clips around the edge. If you slowly work it, they should come off. After we have the housing off, there isn't anything left to hold the PCB board down. Take care when removing. Even though the C1 doesn't have a battery you need to disconnect from the board, there's still a USB port at the top that you don't want to damage. Now with the board out, we can begin adding our foam. I just used some foam that came from the packaging because that's what everyone else seems to do, and I will trust that. Measure the foam out and cut it to fit inside the board. Adding foam helps reduce rattle and removes that hollow sounding feeling from keyboards. After the foam was cut, I found that pushing the little pegs on the back of the board through it worked pretty well. Be careful not to miss any of the taller screw pegs because we need those to hold the PCB board down. I had a little extra on the edge, so I cut it off at the end. You can feel free to trim anything else you want. I also added a little trim around the board kickstand because it had a little bump and I didn't want to push the PCB board up. Now that we have our foam in, we can screw the PCB board back on. You want to be gentle, as tightening it too much could bend or damage your board. It just needs enough to be snug and not move around inside. One last check to make sure I didn't destroy my keyboard, and yes, it still works. For the lube, I decided to go with Super Lube off Amazon, not because I know anything, but because my friend who knows way more than me told me to use it. Thank you, Ethan. To Ghetto Lube the board, you need to press the key down and only add a small amount to the corners. It's very easy to add too much, so only use the smallest drop when lubing. Test out how the switch feels after doing around 2 corners. I felt that it felt better with 3 or so I decided to go with that, but I was also using very small drops, just barely enough to get it wet. This took way longer than I expected, but also I have never lubed a keyboard before, so it was definitely a fun learning experience. I can tell though that Ghetto Lubing definitely saved me a lot of more time than doing the traditional lubing method. Now we can finally hear and see the results of our work. I definitely could have done a better job, but I'm pretty happy with how it is, and I could always redo it later if I learned that I messed up. Otherwise, this is a great way to improve the sound on an already great budget board. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like and comment. I'll definitely look at changing the keycaps or adding some accents to the board in the future, but for now, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.